The first night I worked on the dock, I heard it. A low, guttural noise, something between a scrape and a moan. At first, I thought it was just the ship's hull groaning under the weight of the sea, or the creaking of the aging dock. But it wasn't. It was something else. Something far too close. Too human. I froze, my fingers tight around the steering wheel of the forklift. The sound came again, louder, more desperate. It wasn't the wind. I killed the engine. Silence enveloped the dock. I let my eyes sweep over the stacked containers, the abandoned forklifts, the faint outline of the shoreline barely visible under the dull glow of the security lights. Nothing moved. Another scrape. Closer this time. And then a voice. Barely a whisper, but unmistakable. "Don't stay after 3." I stood paralyzed. The voice sounded like it came from nowhere and everywhere all at once. My heart pounded. The hairs on my neck stood on end. But what chilled me more was the thought of what might happen if I left before the shift ended. The clock flashed 2:58 a.m. The air on the dock always smelled of salt water and rust. But tonight it was heavier, thick with a damp chill that sank into my bones, no matter how many layers I wore. The clock read 10:47 p.m., and the first fog of the evening began to settle over the water, obscuring the horizon with its cold, gray veil. I'd heard rumors when I took the job. Don't stay after 3. I dismissed them at first. Just superstitions. But now, with each hour I spent alone on the pier, they felt less like stories and more like warnings. Jim, the foreman, had been strange tonight. His usual gruff demeanor was replaced by something harder, more distant. He handed me the security badge without a word and gestured to the same forklift I'd been assigned the night before. His eyes darted nervously toward the ocean, and when he spoke it was low, almost as if he were trying to keep his words from being heard. "You'll understand soon enough," he'd muttered before walking away. I wasn't sure what he meant, but the unease in his voice lingered like a cloud hanging over me as I started up the forklift. The sound of the engines humming, the screech of the wheels turning on the gravel. It should have felt familiar, comforting, like a part of the rhythm of the night. But tonight, something was off. There was an edge to the noise, a vibration that seemed too sharp, too jagged for a place like this. The distant clatter of a crane unloading containers echoed, but it felt wrong. Even the air felt wrong. Too still, too thick with tension. I drove the forklift down the long stretch of the dock, past stacks of metal containers, their shadows stretching across the pier like looming sentinels. I could hear the faint ripple of the water slapping the sides of the dock beneath the hum of the engine. But there was another sound, too, a scraping, almost like a fingernail dragging across metal. I stopped the forklift abruptly, the engine's growl dying in the stillness. Silence. I strained my ears, searching the shadows, the empty stretch of the dock. Nothing. No sound, no movement. Just the eerie groan of the ship in the distance and the rustle of the wind against the wire fences. I exhaled slowly, telling myself it was just the wind, or maybe one of the old containers settling. But then a voice. Barely a whisper. "Don't stay after 3." I froze. My heart skipped a beat, and a cold chill crawled down my spine. I looked around, nothing. The dock was empty. I was alone. Was it someone from the crew? A prank. But no one had come close, and the only sounds were the eerie creaks of the dock. I couldn't even pinpoint where the voice had come from. The clock blinked. 2:58 a.m. There it was again, the scrape. Louder this time. Closer. "Don't stay after 3." The words felt like a warning, sharp and insistent. But why? Why 3? I glanced nervously at the dark expanse of the dock. Something was waiting for me out there. I could feel it. The silence, it was too thick, too oppressive. Something watched from the shadows. Something I couldn't see. My hand hovered over the controls of the forklift. I should leave, I knew that. But the thought of leaving without finishing my shift, that would make me look weak. Like I was scared of the dark. I didn't want to be the one who couldn't handle a job like this. So I stayed. And as the minutes dragged on, I wondered if staying would be the worst mistake I'd ever made. By the time my third night rolled around, I already felt the weight of the dock pressing in on me. The shadows seemed deeper, the air thicker. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone here. Not in the way you'd expect. I had coworkers, sure, but their eyes always darted away when I tried to engage them. Their conversations dropped to hushed murmurs whenever I passed by. They didn't seem to want to talk about the dock's history, or the rumors that followed it. Jim, though, had let something slip tonight. Something that stopped me cold when I overheard him talking to another worker in the break room. It gets worse after 3. His voice had carried just enough for me to catch it. But when I looked up, he turned quickly, and the conversation died. The air between them was thick with a silence that only made me more curious. I didn't push the issue. Maybe it was a joke, a superstition, but something about Jim's tone. No one ever jokes about this place. The fog hung heavier tonight, almost as if it had been waiting for me. My shift began like the others, the dull drone of the forklift, the scrape of metal containers being unloaded. The lights overhead flickered in a way that didn't seem natural, casting long, jagged shadows that danced on the edges of my vision. It wasn't until 1:15 a.m. that I heard it. The scrape. Not the faint, distant sound from before. This was closer. So close that I felt the vibrations rattle through the dock. I turned the forklift off, the silence immediately pressing in like a thick wall. My breath came in shallow gasps as I stared into the shadows. Nothing. I stared at the edge of the water, where the dock met the shoreline. The only thing moving was the gentle lapping of the waves. Then the scrape again. I couldn't place where it was coming from. The containers. The crane. "Stop it," I whispered under my breath, but I knew the words were just for me, to calm myself. But the scrape came again. Closer now. Almost rhythmic. It felt as if it were drawing me in. That's when I saw it. A figure, just on the edge of the shadows, standing still. It didn't move. At first, I thought it was another worker, but there was something wrong about the way it stood. Too stiff, too silent. And the air around it felt off. The faintest flicker of light caught something in the figure's eyes. Eyes that glowed. I blinked, and the figure was gone. I stood frozen. The clock read 2:30 a.m. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. A cold, clammy sweat formed on the back of my neck. The figure wasn't human. I couldn't explain it, but I knew it. The dock was supposed to be abandoned this late. The silence was unnerving. But the longer I stayed, the less sure I was that anyone had been working here at all. I pulled myself out of the stupor, grabbed my flashlight, and stepped out of the forklift. I moved cautiously, every step a careful choice, my eyes darting to every corner of the dock. But there was nothing. Just the familiar stillness of empty containers and the soft sound of the water hitting the shore. And then, the voice. "Don't stay after 3. I froze. It was clearer now. Not a whisper, not a faint rustle in the wind. This voice was close, too close. My heart pounded in my chest as I turned to the source. There, standing by a stack of containers, was an old man. He was thin, with pale skin and an almost translucent quality to his features. He wore a tattered coat, and his eyes seemed to glow faintly in the dark, like the reflection of something unnatural. I took a step back. "Who are you?" I managed to croak. He didn't answer. Instead, he just stared at me with those glowing eyes. "You shouldn't have stayed," he said, his voice low, raspy. The words felt like they were cutting through my chest. "You shouldn't stay after 3. I swallowed hard. This wasn't normal. Nothing about this was right. I tried to speak, but my voice caught in my throat. I turned to leave, but before I could take another step, the man hissed, the sound raw and guttural like a beast cornered. The others, they didn't listen. Now they're all gone. The words hung in the air like a curse. I turned to run, but something caught my foot, a strange sticky sensation pulling at my ankle. I glanced down and saw the dock's wood, warped and wet, as though the surface itself was alive. The wood creaked, groaned, and then, a shiver ran down my spine. I looked back to where the man had been standing. But he was gone. The scrape came again, louder, closer. I ran for the forklift, my hands fumbling for the ignition, the noise echoing in my skull. The dock seemed to close in around me, the shadows stretching longer. The fog thickened. My breath came fast, each inhalation heavier than the last. I had to leave. I knew it now. I wasn't safe here. I wasn't alone. The clock read 2:55 a.m. The scraping sound reached a crescendo, deafening now. I slammed my foot down on the gas, speeding away from the place where the man had stood. My headlights cut through the fog like a blade, but the shadows didn't seem to retreat. They followed me, creeping toward me as if the dock itself were alive, hungry, and determined to drag me back. The voice came again, more insistent, more frantic. "Don't stay after 3. But it was too late. The dock was already closing in. The clock flicked to 2:58 a.m., and I didn't stop. I drove the forklift as fast as I could, the metal wheels grinding against the gravel, the engine growling beneath me. But no matter how fast I went, the dock seemed to stretch out further, the shadows darker, the mist thicker. It felt as if I were running on the spot, a hamster in a wheel, going nowhere. I kept my eyes fixed on the path ahead, but the feeling of being watched only grew stronger. Every corner I turned, the air seemed to close in, thick with an unseen presence, pressing down on my chest. The scrape, louder now, like claws against stone. But it was closer than it had ever been. Every breath I took, the noise grew, an ominous rhythm that rattled through my bones. It felt as if it were coming from beneath me. No, not just beneath me. From within the dock, from the very boards themselves. I slammed my foot down on the accelerator again, trying to shake the rising panic gnawing at the back of my mind. But the sound came again, so sharp, so unnatural that it made my stomach turn. The scrape was like a warning, a countdown. I could feel it. It was almost time. "Don't stay after 3. The voice repeated, its words not from a mouth, but from the dock itself. I gritted my teeth. The dock knew something I didn't. The air crackled with some unseen energy, thick with an overwhelming sense of dread, a feeling that the ground beneath me was no longer just concrete and wood. It had turned into something else, something alive. I turned another corner, my hands shaking on the wheel, sweat slicking down my spine, and that's when I saw it. The figure. Not the old man. Not some ghostly silhouette. This one was different. The figure moved, but slowly, unnaturally so, like it wasn't bound by the rules of space or time. It emerged from the fog in front of me, its form shimmering, blurring. First, it was tall, its outline sharp and defined. Then it shifted, bending and stretching as if reality itself was bending in response to its presence. It was a shape that should not have existed in the world. Its face, if you could call it that, was a featureless blur, a dark mass of swirling shadows and eyes. No, not eyes. Holes, black and empty, endless pits that seemed to suck in the dim light, pulling me closer. I slammed the forklift to a halt, my heart pounding so loudly in my ears that it drowned out everything else. The figure stood motionless, its head tilting toward me with a slow, jerking movement, like it was considering whether I was worth its attention. And then, in a voice that wasn't a voice, a low hum that vibrated through the air, it spoke. "You stayed after 3. The words were not a warning this time. They were a statement, an accusation. The ground trembled beneath me. My feet were rooted to the pedals, but I could feel the floorboards of the dock shifting, twisting. The reality around me warped, like the dock itself was alive, awakening from some deep slumber. The air grew colder, impossibly so. A sharp wind sliced through the fog, chilling me to the bone, as if the very atmosphere were turning against me. I didn't dare look away from the figure. It was wrong. Everything about it screamed that it shouldn't be there. But it was. It was. And it was staring at me with those empty, endless eyes, waiting for something. For me to move, to scream, to break. "You shouldn't have stayed." This time, the voice wasn't a whisper. It was inside my head. My breath hitched, panic rising in my throat. The air felt thick with something unspeakable, something pressing in on me from all sides. The figure began to move again, slow and deliberate, its limbs stretching unnaturally. Every step it took seemed to make the ground groan beneath it, a horrible, hollow sound that made my stomach twist. I reached for the gearshift, desperate to get away, but my hand wouldn't obey. I couldn't move. The figure was getting closer, the air around it growing heavier with every inch it took toward me. The dock wasn't just warped, it was closing in. The walls, the containers, the shadows all seemed to fold in on themselves, trapping me in this place, this moment. I snapped. A scream tore itself from my throat, raw and terrified, but it was swallowed up by the surrounding silence. It didn't matter. The figure was too close now, its features too sharp, too wrong. It reached out with a hand, a twisted skeletal thing with long clawed fingers. And then everything stopped. For a moment, there was no sound, no scraping, no whispering, just a thick, suffocating silence that filled my chest and ears. The figure froze mid-motion, its claw hovering just inches from my face, its presence overwhelming. But it wasn't moving anymore. The dock, too, seemed to hold its breath. The fog hung suspended in the air, the very world around me suspended in time, waiting for the inevitable. I didn't dare blink. Then, the voice spoke again, not out loud, but in my mind, in my soul, cutting through every fiber of my being. You stayed after 3. And in that moment I understood. The dock wasn't just a place. It was alive, a parasite, feeding on the lives of those who didn't heed the warning. And I had ignored it. I had stayed. The figure didn't need to move. It didn't need to touch me. The moment I understood the truth, it was too late. My body bent under the weight of what had been waiting for me. What had always been waiting. The last thing I heard before the world collapsed was the sound of the scrape, 1,000 claws dragging across the dock, echoing through my skull. Then nothing. The dock had claimed me, like it had claimed so many others. I woke up on the dock. The first thing I noticed was the cold. It seeped into my bones, more suffocating than the fog itself. I blinked slowly, the edges of my vision blurry, but the moment my eyes focused, I knew something was wrong. The dock. It wasn't the same. The fog was thicker now, swallowing everything, even the glow of the overhead lights. The usual hum of the machinery, the low murmur of the sea, it was all gone. The silence was deafening, unnatural. I staggered to my feet, my legs weak beneath me, my body stiff like I'd been frozen in place for too long. The forklift sat abandoned in the distance, just as I had left it. But everything around me had changed. The containers were stacked higher, their edges jagged, their surfaces covered in strange marks, like something had clawed its way across them. The ground beneath my feet felt soft, too soft, like the wood was no longer solid but alive. Every step I took, I felt the faintest shift beneath me, as if the dock were breathing. I tried to shake it off, tried to tell myself it was just the fog messing with my mind. But the longer I stood there, the more I realized I wasn't alone. The presence I had felt before, the one that made my skin crawl, that twisted my gut into knots, was back. I looked toward the water. The ripples seemed unnatural, as if something moved just beneath the surface, waiting. The thought made my chest tighten, but I couldn't look away. There was something there, something I couldn't see but felt. I could feel its pull, like an invisible hand stretching out toward me. And then there it was. The figure. It stood at the far end of the dock, half hidden in the fog. It didn't move, didn't blink. It was just there, watching. Its eyes glowed in the dark, those same endless pits that had haunted my nightmares. And once again I could hear it in my mind, the same low, guttural voice. You stayed after 3. The words wrapped around me like chains, squeezing tighter with every breath. I opened my mouth to speak, to scream, but no sound came out. I was trapped, caught in this place, this moment. I turned to run, my body trembling, my heart hammering in my chest. But the dock wouldn't let me. The ground shifted beneath me, the wood creaking and groaning, as if it were stretching, pulling, keeping me in place. The mist rolled in thicker, the edges of the dock dissolving into nothingness, like the entire place was slipping away from the real world. I stumbled back to the forklift, my hands shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. I tried to start it, but the engine sputtered. The low growl of the engine died before it even had a chance to turn over. The shadows around me closed in tighter. There was no escape. I heard footsteps behind me. They were slow, deliberate, the sound of something dragging itself through the mist. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. The figure was getting closer. Its presence filled the air, so heavy I could feel it pressing against my skin. The scraping sound began again, louder this time, more insistent. It was coming from every direction, as if the dock itself were alive, its very bones grinding against one another. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the footsteps stopped. I turned around, and for the first time, I saw the figure's face clearly, or what should have been its face. The blur of darkness that had once been a featureless void was now shifting, distorting, like it couldn't hold its shape. Its eyes, those black holes, were closer now, almost within reach. And in those eyes, I saw everything I had feared. The face twisted into something almost human, the skin stretching and peeling away in places, revealing raw, blackened flesh beneath. It opened its mouth, wide, impossibly wide, a gaping hole of darkness, and it whispered, the words ringing in my skull. "You should have left." I screamed, but the sound was swallowed up by the oppressive silence. The dock was all that was left, the figure looming over me, its presence crushing my chest, suffocating me in its grip. I was never supposed to stay. And now, there was no one left to remember me. The next morning, the fog had lifted. The dock was empty. No sign of the strange figure. No trace of the eerie events that had unfolded. The cranes rumbled to life. The workers shuffled past as if nothing had changed. But the place was different now. No one asked about me. No one mentioned my name. And as the sun began to set, the faintest sound of scraping filled the air. A warning. A reminder. Don't stay after 3. And those who did would never leave.